Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to an extra special edition of Ending Physician Overwhelm. If you are watching me on YouTube or Instagram, you can see that I am at the beach. That is the Pacific Ocean behind me. I am on a trip with my family at the Washington coast. And it is part of the theme for this week because we're talking about what is possible. And we're going to be going through some questions that will help you get started. But, kind of here's the impetus. Last week we talked about it's not possible, right? What is impossible to do, which is generally the list of tasks that we have, the list of responsibilities that we have, the expectations that we carry with us, some of which are implicit to our experience and which are explicit. But letting go of these ideas that we should be able to do it all, that we should be able to do everything, that we should be able to make everyone happy and meet everyone's needs, even knowing that the expectations that are in place for people in healthcare, for working women, for the obligations of women's roles in society, we could go on and on about the list of things that is not reasonable to expect of ourselves. So last week, we really dove into letting go of some of those ideas. This week, I want to embrace what actually is possible. And again, we're going to talk about some questions that we will get started. But part of it is I'm sitting on a beach recording. I can hear the sound of the waves, and you might be able to hear the sound of the waves. I'll make sure that it's not too crazy loud. But when I started this podcast in, 2022, I was still thinking about all the rules, right, that I was collecting about what does it mean to actually have a podcast. And I used to formally write out all the scripts and, be very sort of careful and methodical because who was I to create a podcast? Now, I don't know, 3 years and plus, right? I am open to the possibility that it doesn't have to look the way that I imagined, which is why I'm recording on the beach, just sitting here. I didn't get a chance to record before we left. That's okay. It is okay. It doesn't matter. If the sound recording is so bad that you can't hear my words, I'm going to go record in the car. It's not going to be a big deal. What's important to me is holding true to the ideas of breaking down some of the rules and barriers that we've created to, for ourselves and being able to engage with our real human lives. So again, if you're watching me on YouTube or Instagram, you can see, I'm going to point, here's my kids. They're digging in the sand. They are 10 and 13, and they're having a grand old time because what is better than digging holes in the sand at the beach, throwing sand, getting all crazy messy. Now, I'm not going to lie, me as mom knows that she's going to have to clean all that stuff up. But it is okay because that is what it means to be at the beach. So here we are. It's weird to be recording a podcast at the beach. That's part. It is also a time in our life when just a few months ago, I wouldn't have thought that it'd be possible to go on vacation. And this is not the most perfect vacation. I'll tell you what we mean. We sort of hit a health crisis with one of my kids a couple months ago. And that sort of drove us into, kind of emergency response mode. And we had to very quickly engage with some medical treatment. And we're still in the treatment and some other things going on with my other child. And I would say that we've moved out of the urgent situation for sure. but we're still sort of dealing with some of the downstream sort of ramifications. And because I am a person, not unlike yourselves probably, who is good at jumping in a crisis, part of my brain will be, nope, you can't think about vacation. You can't think about relaxing. You can't think about enjoyment. And so when that was happening a few months ago in, kind of throughout the month of May and in early June, I was thinking, nope, 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 there's no way that we're going to go on summer vacation. And thankfully, for better or for worse, we didn't have anything planned. But as things started to look less urgent, less acute, I was able to tap into, I would really like for our family to be able to go on a little bit of a trip. Now, because we are still in treatment, and because we have now fixed appointments every week, we were going to have to keep it pretty short. And so my brain started asking the question, what is possible? What is possible for us to do that would feel relaxing, would feel like a bit of a vacation? Now, I'm going to interrupt myself and come over here to this seagull who was hanging out. He was watching my kid earlier. Pretty sure it's the same one, but who knows? Now it's just watching me. That's what's going on when you record a podcast at the beach. Anyhow. What is possible? And I decided that, you know what? My kids love the beach. They also love a hotel. They love a hotel with a pool and a free breakfast. And so hopped on, found, a good enough. So we're going to be at the beach for a few days. We're going to go to Portland for a few days. This is not a big, extreme fancy vacation, but it was a something. And they are having a great time. And that's what's really important. And so you'll see why I'm highlighting that story as we go through, because those are some of the questions that are allowing me to get out of my own business and try and enjoy life more, which I'm not going to lie, it's still kind of a challenge because I'm a type A rule follower. I'm kind of uptight, a hard time relaxing. That hasn't changed, but working on it, work in progress. So let's think about what is possible. Now, when I'm working with someone who is a fellow women physician and we're doing some coaching, asking the question, what is possible, is a little bit too big. It's a little bit too big, right? If we are trying to deal with a specific situation, just asking the question, what is possible? Whether that is looking at kind of an immediate situation or just thinking even more broadly about like, what do they actually want for their lives? That is too big. And so that is not what we do to get started, right? What we're going to do is start to explore what are the rules that we have created for ourselves that aren't really necessary and are keeping us stuck. So I mentioned something that I identify as a rule, which is that, I can kind of very quickly slip into crisis mode, and I'm great in a crisis. Not being an emergency physician, no longer doing any hospital medicine, I'm probably not the person that you want running the code, but I am good at appearing calm and moving forward on things that need to happen. And I imagine that you are as well, right? Because that is why we are here, my friends. But because of that, it is often, kind of a baked in rule that you do not stop and have fun. You do not stop and breathe. You do not take care of yourself, right? And again, I found myself having that old trained thought in my brain when we were kind of starting with treatment. And is it necessary? This will be another question that we talk through, but I know for myself, I want my kids to have a fun time, even though we are navigating some challenges. I want them to look back at this period and remember something fun about this summer. And because of that, right, I was able to let go of this rule of like, no, we have to be serious and we have to proceed and, get 100% out of the situation before we have fun, right? But what rules have you created that are unnecessary? Now, the examples that I'm giving here are life, right? And not necessarily in the professional realm. But, if you slip this into the professional realm too, there are things about the way that you practice medicine that are rules you have created. There are rules that you have created for yourself that are not really necessary and not really serving you. I know that there are, right? That is how we operate, right? We create rules. And part of the challenges of medical training is that we teach people how to police themselves. Part of the negativity that we engender, part of the shame and humiliation that is rife within medical training teaches us to internalize our own angry old white man in our head, right? Who's yelling at us constantly, who's telling us that we're not good enough, that we need to work harder, that we need to be better at it. And because of that, right, we create a lot of rules for ourselves, like, we have to always try and get to inbox 0. We have to always do things in a certain way. Kids, all right, here they are. But we can take this into our personal realm as well, right? And we can figure out what are the rules that we have created for ourselves that really aren't necessary, that really aren't serving us. We can do that in our personal lives. We can do that in our professional lives. Now, of course, there may be rules from your employer, right, that you have to follow, or, maybe sometimes you don't follow them if they're not going to harm anyone. But, maybe we don't explicitly seek permission to not follow them. I've shared this story before. At one point in my employed physician career, we would circulate a double book sheet every day. Where did you want to be double booked? Where did you want to be double booked? You could pick, would you put it in the morning? Would you put it early? Would you put it late in the day? And, I used to get so angry every time they would circulate this list at Huddle. And I was just like, why do I have to choose to be overworking if every day we assume that we're going to be double booked, so that we assume that there's going to be urgent needs that we are not equipped to handle, right? It would make me so angry, right? And my rule in my head was that if somebody asks me something like that, that I have to participate, that I have to write something down, right? That I have to be a team player, right? I know this is going to hit right on everyone's buttons. Eventually, I decided, you know what? I'm just not going to write anything down. I'm not going to write down that you have permission to double book me at 1 p.m. I'm not going to write down that you have permission to double book me ever. I'm not going to continue to play by the rule that every time somebody asks me for some extra accommodation that I don't think is reasonable, that I'm going to say yes. That was very early stabs at setting some boundaries, but I did it quietly. I wasn't rude about it. I didn't make a fuss about it. I just didn't write anything down. And you know what? 0 people ever commented on it. Thankfully, no one, came to me and said, oh, that's not, and it's not to say that I never got double booked, because of course I did. Sometimes I did, right? And sometimes I would know about it in advance, and sometimes I wouldn't. But I no longer accepted the rule, that the internal rule, right? That I needed to go along with everything that everybody asked of me, or 2, that I needed to, just suck up the planned incompetence, right, of us figuring out medical scheduling, right? We have all played that game. I am not a fan. So when we think about this big picture of what is possible, we need to first identify some rules that you are playing by that are not necessary, that are not helpful, so that we can learn to start letting them go. The next question, right, is that if you zoom out from your immediate circumstances and appreciate the perspective that you've gained in the decades of your life, what is important about this moment and this period of your life? So I alluded to this earlier, that for myself, part of my challenge, right, is okay, they're flying kites now. You can see that over there. Part of this is that, yes, I want to be doing interesting things with my life and career. Yes, I want to be growing. And it is also very important to me that I am working on trying to relax and enjoy my life, but also enjoy this life with my family. I don't love saying this, but I think for me, it is so much easier for me to keep my head buried in work and to live my life as though that is the most important thing because I do enjoy medicine. I do enjoy taking care of people. I do enjoy having that role and helping people. And I do feel that I get to help people in some very discreet ways, with the work that I do. I appreciate that not everyone is like me. And I appreciate that there are, fortunately, a lot of us who have this, where our work is very important. It's very easy to overwork. It's very easy to get sucked up in the machine that has us chronically overworking. And that's part of the reason why we're here. But also, some of us really struggle to relax into our free hours, to hold boundaries around our free hours, and to live and be present with the people that are important in our lives outside of work. When I zoom out, right, and recognize that I don't want to be missing this period of life with my kids, I don't want to not be present with them. I want them to have great memories of, this time. And, I recognize that these kids in particular, and, if you've got kids who are around the age of my kids or a little older, a little younger, right, you recognize that we all lived through this global pandemic, which significantly affected the sort of normal experience for people during that time. Similarly, of course, families affected by, severe illness like a cancer diagnosis or, certainly living through war, right? Um, we could talk about the political situation, which I'm not going to dig into, but um, yes, of course, every generation has its challenges, but the pandemic stands out, right, as this very global collective trauma that happened to humans and all the shutdowns and all the downfall that sort of came out of that was happening when my kids were quite young, 4 and 7. So it's really important to me that in this period, when they're so conscious and they will remember this part of their childhood, that I am helping to create positive memories and positive sort of trajectories for them because I do think that's important, right? And so in that, even though it was going to be difficult to have, the kind of vacation that I would want to have, we could create a little bit of a break. We could create a little bit of a thing that still allowed us to continue with the therapies and appointments that we need, but we can relax together. We can do something that they find, so fun and enjoyable and just spend some time together, right? So again, this question is, if you zoom out from your immediate circumstances and whatever that is, right? It might just be the busyness of life. It may be some stressful situation that you're going through. It might be, a pregnancy and sort of the newborn period. It could be navigating a cancer diagnosis. It could be navigating a job transition, right? Any number of circumstances that come up. If we zoom out and appreciate what is important to be here, right? Then you start to open yourself up to this question of what is possible for me? What is possible for you? All right. And then the final question is, how will you use this information to take actions on building towards what you want and practice letting go of the rigidity and rules that are holding you back. So let's incorporate these two things together, right? So we recognize that we have rules, that we have ideas about the way things ought to go and how we ought to be and perform in our work lives, in our home lives, right? And often, again, there is a lot of rigidity and rules. There is a lot of sort of baked in self-disciplining that we have inherited from the practice of medicine. There might be external toxicity, right, in terms of you being told that you're, not a team player if you don't triple book yourself, 4 times a day, right? There are a number of things that we need to let go of and put down if we are going to realize what is possible for us. And we also want to incorporate the perspective that we've gained on what actually is important to me. What actually is important for my life based on my experience. If I know that I work in a broken healthcare system that always wants me to overwork, that will always imply that, we should constantly be sprinting and hustling, but I can step back and have the perspective that that is always going to be the case. It is always going to be the sort of false belief that everything is a crisis always because they know that that's how we will respond. If I can step back and see, no, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. My career in medicine is a marathon, and thus I'm going to need to pace myself. Then I can choose to set the boundaries. Then I can choose to figure out how to put in the things that are important to me, right? Then I can prioritize. I'm going to say there's too many shapes there. Those are not all my family. My husband and kids are back there somewhere. If I want to prioritize them, what do I need to do, right? I need to limit the amount of work that I do. I need to realize that sometimes it's time to turn off the computer. I need to schedule in the breaks and the intentional blank space and choose to have some adventures. Like I said, my kids love coming to the beach. They love a hotel with a pool. They love the, hotel breakfast, like just no other, right? And, I'm not going to lie. I don't love it. I don't love it, but that is okay. That is okay. So I invite you to think about this for yourself. Again, last week we talked about it's not possible to do all the things. It's not possible to meet all the expectations. It's not possible to leave ourselves last and be whole, fully fledged human beings, right? Living this life. What is possible requires us to look at the rules and rigidity that we've created and to really explore those things and see if they're necessary. It's necessary for us to look at our perspective from our lived experience and start to identify what is important for me. What is important and how will I put it in place? And to bring those two things together. What will I let go of in order to create space for what's important to me? My friends, that is what I have for you. Thankfully, I did not get dive bombed by any birds. My seagull friend has wandered away, so oh well. I'm going to go catch up with my kids and my husband. I hope you have a fabulous week. I hope that you are enjoying the podcast. If you are, I would love it if you would leave a rating and a review. Those help the podcast to be found. So leave the gold stars and write some words out because that helps the algorithm, helps us be found. I love you all. I hope you have a fabulous day. Take care. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.